Welcome everyone. Today we will be covering how to add comments to an existing database using code-first database approach. Basic tools that we are using are the same as always: Visual Studio Community, Visual Studio Code, Docker, and MySQL. We'll show you how to update an existing database and how to add comments without annotations and allow those to persist in the database. We advise you to create backups or copies of your database. Always review the migration for accuracy, otherwise you might lose the data. The documentation is available in Microsoft website. It will show you how to create a new database or an existing database. If you don't have one already, the documentation that you will need is to create a new application. It doesn't need to be a console, it can be any kind of project that you want. You will create the models or the classes, typical C# class, and then you create a context, which is also a class. You will need to add the entity framework package and the necessary connectors for your database. In case of MySQL, you need a MySQL connector. If you use Microsoft SQL, you need a Microsoft SQL connector. Now, to deal with model changes or modifications to the database, you will need to enable migrations in case that is not already enabled by default. What the documentation doesn't show you is how to use Fluent API and Model Builder to add comments to your existing database. That's what we will be covering today. So make sure that your database engine and your database is accessible. In our case, we're just using a container. In order to check if the database is reachable, we can open MySQL Workbench, navigate to one of the tables, and open by clicking the cog. Notice that we have comments on the table and in the columns, but not all columns have comments or notes. So that's what we will be going to do now with code-first database. So we start by opening the context, the existing context. If you don't have one, you can create one using the documentation. And we'll then add a property pointing to the column name and then stating that it has a comment. The comment is then a normal string that you can immediately write it, or you can save it in a variable. Once you made the modifications in the context and the model builder, you run the following command: add migration. You specify the name of the next version and the name of your context. The project or pointing to your starter project is optional. You then need to review the migration so you do not lose data. Sometimes you can make mistakes, so it's always a good policy to check everything before you update the database. The method that is called up are the changes that you are going to do in the database. The method called down is if you regress or come back to a previous version of the context. If you found something that is wrong, or you want to make further changes, you can remove the migration by specifying the name of the context and your starter project. It will remove the last or the latest migration that you created. Once everything is up to your standards, you can update the database. Specify the name of your migration and the name of your context. Once it's done, you can go back to MySQL Workbench or your studio of choice to manage your database in case you did not choose MySQL, and you can check that all columns are now filled with a note or a comment. Also, you can verify that no data was lost. So for as long as you check if the scaffolding is not creating any kind of errors and you check for accuracy, you will not lose any data. That is it for today. See you in the next video.